efficiencies this year, which I will go over with you next. And they start on page 37. We did have several audit adjustments this year, and those are required to be listed in the finding, and I was going to go over each one of those with you. The first one, where there's the understatement by $17,000 of grant revenue and due from other governments. The grant revenue reimbursement was not received until after year end and was not booked back as revenue and receivable for FY20. So we had to make that accrual adjustment to get it in there. So basically your grant revenue was understated until it was made. The second one, the due to other governments and expenditures were understated by $19,000. This is, you get the room tax in and you have to send a certain portion of it out to other entities. One of those is the golf course. The calculation is being done at 3% instead of 3.5%. So it's been 0.5% off. So that means you still owe the golf course that $19,431. So that calculation needs to be corrected to make sure it's right. That is an error in a calculation that we noted last year too, and had to make an adjustment for. The third one, beginning fund balance, was overstated. When we showed up there and started looking, every year your beginning fund balance in any 1 year should match your ending fund balance from the prior. If it doesn't, that means there's something going on. We did notice that adjustments had not been made, the audit adjustments had not been made, and certain transactions had been posted backwards in QuickBooks to the prior year after the audit was done. So we had to make an adjustment to correct that, to bring the beginning fund balance up to where it should have been to match the prior year audited numbers. And then the fourth one is the prior period adjustment, that $14,775 that we've gone through. And on the next page, as part of the net pension liability, we do look at some of the census data that's sent to PERS to make sure that it is accurate, because we get our liability information from them for you. We did note that one new hire that we did look at didn't have the right hire date on it. They used their birth date instead of their hire date. Nobody caught it and sent it to PERS that way. So we probably need to have some kind of control over that to make sure that the census information sent to PERS is accurate, because their actuaries use that to determine birth dates, marital status, and all of that, hire dates, all of that information, and calculating the liability and the portion that is for your entity. We did have kind of the same issue last year when we tested the PERS census, and excuse me. There was no documentation for the termination dates reported to PERS last year. So, like I say, our recommendation would be to look at tightening the internal controls to make sure that information is accurate when it goes out. The third one is to do with journal entries. It's not unusual for an entity to have to make a manual adjustment. Sometimes things happen. You've got to correct them. Something needs to be fixed, or it's just not coming in a way that needs to be done. It's not unusual. But those are manual entries. Those should always be reviewed by somebody other than the preparer. Jeff is the only one with the QuickBooks, access to the QuickBooks, does prepare those journal entries. We did test all of them that he made, all 4 that he made. We didn't find any errors with the entry, but someone else should always be looking at those and reviewing them to make sure that what's being done, there's a legitimate purpose, it makes sense, and it looks good before they get posted into the books. So those were our 3 findings for this year. I do have one other thing that I need to go over with you, a letter that we're required to do, but before I move on, does anybody have any questions about any of the stuff in the financial statements I talked about, any of these findings?
Hey, Mary. I had a question just about that finding that was the overspend in the intergovernmental. It was like 34,000 and then a 200 something. Could you explain that just a little bit more? just because, you know, when you look at how we finished last year, we finished with an operational surplus. You know, we did an augmentation. How did we overspend those? And was that the intergovernmental distributions that we didn't account for when we ended up making so much more money than what we thought we had originally were going to make?
Yes, so, and this is one of those things, you did end up in a good position. And I'm going to scroll to the page here that shows it. This is the final budget that got sent to the state. This one, and if you go down, for culture and rec, you had told the state, even with the augment, you would spend 1.1. You spent 1.2. You have $49,000 over budget. Same thing with intergovernmental. You had budgeted the $479.60. You spent $710,580. It's $230,000 over. Yes, we know why it's over, but unfortunately, the NAC code doesn't have a "it's okay if" in it. It's a don't overspend the budget by function. So your functions would be like general government, culture and rec, intergovernmental. So you've got to watch those totals. Because that's where that comes in. And like I say, we know that the intergovernmental went up because you get so much more room tax. That's great and wonderful. But as I said, NAC says you're not allowed to overspend. So there's no nice little clause in there for, but we got more money. Without doing an amendment. So probably year end, you just need to be really watching that to make sure any adjustment you need to make at year end for it. Does that make more sense? Is that what you were looking for, Kyle?
Yeah, I just needed a little bit more info on that. Thank you.
Yeah, and along with that, to make sure you know, NRS requires that you will be required to do a corrective action plan to answer for the findings in these NRS possible violations, and that's due within 60 days.
Okay.
Okay.
Do I hear any questions for Mary? Any further questions? At this time, we'll make sure, Judy, to put the corrective action plan on the agenda for next meeting. And I will entertain a motion to accept the report as presented and written.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept this report by Ada Bailey of today and approve it for the financial audit and acceptance.
Second that motion.
Thank you. It's been moved by Marietta and seconded by Brian. Is there any further discussion? I would like to say thank you, Mary, you and I, Bailey, for this is a very thorough report, and it's just, that's what we have an audit for, is to get better, and that's certainly appreciate understanding all of these different entities or entries that we need to correct. So thank you very much, and if they're on the corrective action plan, I would assume that you can probably give us at least a little guidance on that before our next meeting.
Yeah, it's standard every year. If you want me to look at it before you guys review and approve it, I'm happy to do that and help in any way we can. We're happy to help you out. We know sometimes trying to keep up with all this is a big headache. We understand, so anything we can help with, we're happy to do.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. At this time, I'd like to certainly take all in favor. Please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mary, and I'm sure we'll be in touch because we'll get that letter on the agenda for next month. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chairwoman?
Yes.
I just want to make sure it's clear for the record, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Henry, but you moved to accept the report. Is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to item H, discussion and for possible action. Update on the Shell Racer Music Festival that is scheduled for June